On today's episode of the Real Recovery Podcast, episode number 49, we welcome Megan S., a mother, advocate, and resilient survivor whose journey through addiction, recovery, and generational healing is nothing short of inspiring. Megan's story offers a rare glimpse into the complexities of addiction within families, the impact of generational trauma, and the power of recovery to break the cycle. As the mother of a young woman in recovery, Megan brings a unique perspective on support, transformation, and the unbreakable bond between parent and child in the healing process. Join us as we explore her incredible path to recovery, the lessons she's learned along the way, and the hope she shares with others walking a similar road.
Hello, and welcome to the Real Recovery Podcast. I'm Julie, your co-host, on this journey of healing and transformation. Together with my co-host, Peter, we dive into the heart of recovery, sharing stories that resonate with courage and inspiration.
That's right, Julie. Each episode is a new chapter in this vast narrative of recovery, and we're honored to bring them to you. But keep in mind, the perspectives you'll hear are for informational purposes only and may not reflect the views of the podcast or our partners.
Indeed, while these conversations can be a powerful part of your recovery toolkit, they are not substitute for professional medical advice. We encourage you to seek guidance from your healthcare provider for any treatment-related decisions.
And if you're facing an immediate crisis, or if you just need to talk to someone who understands, don't hesitate to call the Recovery Crisis Line at 503-223-85. The number is also on our website. Help is available 24/7.
Now let's begin our episode
Of recovery, real recovery. Perfect.
Welcome to the Real Recovery Podcast. Peter is cracking me up.
Innuendos aside, welcome to our show.
Thank you. I won't tell you what he said. It was so perverted. And we want to welcome Megan. And this is Ashley's mom that we had on just a few weeks ago. And we thought it would be really interesting for you to hear both sides of the story. Me, myself, especially, I have a daughter that has 8 months of recovery next Tuesday.
Oh, yes.
And so I'm really excited to hear your story, the mother and daughter thing. I don't think people realize just how genetic addiction can be.
Yeah.
When I spoke to my aunt, who is not afflicted whatsoever, but my grandfather came by it. My mother was the oldest child, and it affects the oldest child first, or the first boy, especially on alcoholism. And I'm the only child. And Cassandra's the only child. So it can go right down the genetic history.
So I have a family member, and because they recently started recovery for themselves, and we were talking about our family, and we believe there was a lot of alcoholism throughout our family history, but it just never was talked about, or it just wasn't.
Same.
It wasn't expressed back then. It was just a hidden thing, like, oh, my uncle so-and-so, he just always drinks a little too, whatever. It wasn't. And our family events always were around 5 o'clock. It's happy hour, trying to get everybody together. And that's what we got together and drank.
Yeah, all my whole family's addiction, like recovery was the abnormal thing for us, right? Like it was everybody, my mom, my sisters, and I'm the only one that's made it out. Now my kid.
Which is everything, right?
Yeah.
So tell us the beginning, the middle, and how we got here today.
Yay. Yeah. Like I said, so I grew up in a family of addiction. That was like normal for me. I was 6 years old and my mom got called from the school because I was cutting lines of sugar on the table. And like the teachers had called my mom. They're like, this is some suspicious behavior. And I was just mimicking obviously what I had seen at home.
Yeah, it's not something you learn in school.
Right. And I'm like rolling little paper joints out of paper. But that's what I grew up knowing. And I was taught really early on that we don't talk about the things that are going on in our home. We don't want to get people involved because it's negative. I was taught that the police were bad people, that any government officials, teachers were bad. They're only there to teach us things. And so that was normal for me. When I'd go over on the occasions that my family actually let me go to other people's houses, and I'm seeing them sit down at the table for dinner and like they're having family time. First of all, they have food. We didn't have food in our house. And then like it was so abnormal to me. It felt really uncomfortable.
I bet.
Yeah, it did. And my first addiction was food. That was my first addiction. I remember before I found drugs and alcohol, like I would go to bed dreaming about food, wake up thinking about food. I would hide in the closet, eat food. I wait till nobody was around and I'd raid whatever food was in the house. And that was like my first, and still is like my like hardest thing to overcome.
Do you think that's because you didn't have enough? So when you had it, you thought you needed to get it?
Yeah, going it through. So I've gone and how they say in the rooms, seek that professional help aside from like the rooms. And I did. And when I did that, I found out that was like one of the things is it was like a survival thing for me. There was never food around. My family was, as you would call it, tweakers. So food wasn't on the forte in the house. I would find any means to eat and stuff. Yeah. When I was 9, I found my mom's, she had a thing of brandy. And I would steal sips of that and I'd put water in it. And I was like, that made me feel better. I was like, I felt good. I felt better and things weren't so hard. I think she caught on because eventually she changed the brandy to Kahlua. So you can't really dilute that.
That's so funny because we did the same thing. We would take from my parents' cabinet and make it back up to the line just in case they would notice with water. And I always wondered, did they ever feel like, wow, this drink isn't hitting me like it used to or something?
I hear my mom yell at my brother, right? And my brother's like the goody two-shoes of everything. Like he has his own addictions, never like a substance use, but he had his own other addictions. And he'd always get blamed for it. And I'd laugh and I'd be like, oh, it's me. Like I'm the baby. Nobody's going to think it's me. But yeah, so my mom and my sister and all my family, like they're all still in active use, but they would always be behind their bedroom door. The door would be shut. I'd never get to be a part of it. And when I was 14, I had a friend who was like, hey, do you want to try this? It's called speed. And I was like, okay. And I did. And I was like, oh my God, I'm not hungry. I don't want food. We don't have any anyways.
That was it for me.
Yeah.
When I did meth and I started to lose weight, I thought it was the fucking miracle drug.
Right?
And because I was chubby, everybody kept saying, man, you look good. Man, you look so much. Yeah. And then I was dancing a lot. So I got a lot of exercise because I was high. So the cardio was
had
there.
To go somewhere.
Yeah. And literally the people, my mom told me, oh, you look the best I've seen you in a long time.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. My mom too. She's, you look good. I had told her that I used, right? And my hope was one of two things was going to happen. Either she was going to be like, no, don't do it. I'll stop. Don't. And it was going to be great. Or I was going to get like in serious trouble. But she ended up telling me, no, it's okay as long as you do it with me. And I was like, okay.
Holy
and then
shit.
Yeah. And then I got to go behind the closed door. And I really would say that it was the worst thing ever, but I can't lie. Like being able to spend that time with my family, as toxic as it was, I think it was my only chance that I would ever get to know my family. And you know how passing the peace pipe around like a powwow thing, like I got to understand my family on a level that I don't think I ever would have. I knew my mom's traumas, where she had come from. They would tell stories but
what a way to learn, though.
What a way to learn. And the stories became repetitive. Like soon it was the same story over and over again. The stories never changed. They weren't growing. They were stuck. Whatever they started, they were stuck in it.
Oh, yeah.
And luckily my dad, he had a different idea when he was around of the life that I could have. So he would put me in plays and get me out of the house and try to get me as much exposure to life as possible. So I knew that there was something different out there. I had 2 lives. But yeah, that's how it all started.
And you were
me.
able to function in those outside family events.
I was, which was the weirdest thing. And I think that kept me locked in for like the longest time. So I have ADHD. So I was self-medicating. And I lost weight, just not enough. Like I was the only one in my family. My sisters were emaciated and you could tell. But for me, I was like in active use and I was 400 plus pounds. And I was working and then I'd come home and I'd have my party life and then I'd go to work. I also I have a 30-year-old son. I had him when I was 16. And I lost him to addiction because I chose drugs over him. So that was a trauma for me.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, no, I was able to, what do they call it? Functioning addict,
Yeah.
right? I had a really
Yeah.
good job and I was able to support my habit. And I thought that it was my purpose in life to show people how to be successful. I'm like, these people don't know how to do it right. Let me show you how to do it. Okay.
This is the way.
Yeah, this is the way.
I love it.
Yeah. So that's how that all started. Like I said, I was able to work and I had a really good job I was doing. I was working for the government, funny enough. And I had enough good insurance to get the gastric bypass. So this was in 2005. They rolled out that gastric bypass thing. And I'm like, oh, an easy way to be skinny. And I didn't tell them I had a drug problem, didn't tell them I had an eating disorder. And I got the surgery despite all the doctors saying now it's a journey. And because of that, I ended up having complications from the surgeries. I've had 13 abdominal surgeries since the gastric bypass.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's so fun. It's similar. I've had 14 stomach surgeries, but I've never had that surgery.
I wouldn't recommend it.
No.
It's dangerous.
I would choose to be big versus surgery.
Yeah. I really wish I wouldn't have done it. I see people now in recovery, like that's a route that they choose. And I support them in it. And I try to give them as much knowledge as I can on
I'm just scared.
things. It's scary. It changes everything.
It's just like the Ozempic. I have a friend in AA and he looks amazing right now. I saw him on the screen at a Zoom meeting and I said, damn, bro, you look good. What are you doing? And he said Ozempic. And I think for me, having to do the syringe.
Yes.
For me, fuck
That
no.
would be triggering.
Yeah. That'd be like an alcoholic taking the bottle, putting it in their mouth.
Yeah.
So I'm scared. Yeah. I'm literally scared. I don't think I could do that.
That's funny. I actually ordered about a year ago. I'd ordered Ozempic and it was delivered to the house. I hadn't opened it yet because I was a little nervous to start it. And I get a text message from Ashley. And she's, what's this? And she shows me a picture because it was this, they send you the syringes, they send you the medication and everything, but all she saw was the syringes. And she's like, what is this? Explain yourself.
I love it.
I like the dynamic, the daughter calling out the mother.
No, I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She threw that away.
You look beautiful just the way you are.
Thank you. I have taken pride in myself now. I actually do body positivity modeling and I celebrate where I'm at because it took me a long time to get to a place where I loved myself, that I know no matter what, I feel good on the inside.
Yeah.
Well, and that's good. I don't always feel great about my body. I'm chubby as fuck, but I tell myself I'm not high. I've always been chubby, so it's not something that just happened. And I like who I am, though I wish I was thinner for healthier reasons, but I'm scared to do all the stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. I sometimes think maybe if I just got high for 6 months, but no.
It'll be easy to come back.
Yeah, but I'm scared of fentanyl. There you go.
Yeah, there ain't nothing safe out there anymore.
No.
Yeah. Yeah. So when I moved out here in 2006, I thought moving away from the substances would take me different location. I don't have to worry about it.
Yeah.
California. Yeah. But funny enough, there's drugs out here in Oregon too.
Believe it or not.
Believe it or not. And I was like, man, they followed me.
They followed you. I love it.
And my addiction just rehashed itself out here. And I ended up meeting this guy on MySpace, was the thing back then. And MySpace. And I was like so enamored with him. And I'm like, oh, he's everything. And he showed me around Portland and all this cool stuff. And about 6 months into our relationship, I'm like, hey, do you want to go meet my family in California? And he's okay. So I take him down there. And needless to say, when we got back, I woke up the next day and he had moved out. Oh. He was scared. He was scared. Wow. And I was like, oh my gosh. We ended up working it out. And we had 2 kids together, got married, Ashley and Paige. But because of all the complications from the surgeries, I was in and out of the hospital. And then I ended up getting a really gnarly addiction to opioids. And the hospitals kept prescribing them to me one after the other. And so much so that I didn't know. I had thought, have you ever hurt yourself and you're out of a bottle of pills and you figure, okay, I'm done. That's it. Yeah. This is the end of it. I thought I was done after one of my surgeries. And all of a sudden, I'm feeling sick. I'm sweating. My body's hurting. And I didn't know I was I was having withdrawals.
Wow.
The nurse comes out and she's like, oh, you're withdrawing. And I was like, what do you mean? And she's like, you're addicted to pain pills. And in my mind, I'm like, addicted meant like I was abusing it.
Yeah.
And I was just so angry at the healthcare system for that because they didn't tell me anything about tapering or they didn't tell me anything. They didn't give me any assistance to get off of it. And have you ever guys seen the movie Trainspotting?
Yes.
Okay, so you know the train spotting where he's, this is how you get off of heroin, right? I was like, I'm going to use the train spotting method. I've been clean for 3 years off of, I was what they call a dry drunk. I was clean 3 years off of meth and I had to find it again because I was going to use it to get off of the pain pills. And so I used the train spotting method to get myself off of opioids myself. That was fun. Not really.
I used weed to get off of meth, not once, but twice.
Yeah, it was, I just opened up a Pandora's box and got myself right back into it. It was horrible. Ended up leaving after several tours to Cedar Hills Hospital. I wasn't willing to admit that I needed treatment. So I went the mental health route, which I'm glad that I did because that's where a large part of my advocacy lies now. But I learned so much about myself and so much about the whole cognitive stuff. I learned so much.
We're bonded for life. I'm
Cedar Hills. I love that place.
I went there 25 years sober. I went for mental health, for stress management, from working too much. It was the first time I dealt with being molested from 5 to 11. Mm-hmm. And I can talk about it and not cry. And it was the first time I didn't know what the word rumination meant. I didn't learn it until Cedar Hills. And I was like, damn, bitch, that's what you do, right? You get a thought and I can stop myself now from doing it.
That's amazing.
So I went once because the doctor made me go because she just wanted me to have the tools. And then I chose to go a second time. And the second time, because it was my choice to go, the second time was amazing for me. And I learned even more. And I think Peter, and I don't think he even knows like just how much I was processing a memory. Somebody had died on TV and they were my client in the escort service. And I had never ran into a client, anything like that, not in 30 years, 32, 35 years. And I called Peter the second I see it. And I don't watch the news. I only saw it by accident because there was a basketball game on and it went to the news afterwards. And I am so grateful that I was in Cedar Hills when this all happened. And I had therapy the very next day. But I called Peter and I'm like, dude, you just don't know what happened. And Peter was you were the only person I called.
Yeah.
My sponsor was out of town.
It brought back a lot.
For 3 weeks, I was stuck and I was so grateful I wasn't working. I was in a small group, a group of 5. And it was the right time, the right place. And so I love Cedar Hills.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people I have a friend there right now.
That's good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I really believe that mental health, and I love that treatment centers now are incorporating the co-occurring diagnosis, but a lot of people, they're really afraid to ask for help for mental health. Like they'll come in and they'll say, I have a problem with drugs and alcohol and I want to get clean. I need tools for my toolbox, this, that, and the other. But they don't want to open those doors to think that they possibly have a diagnosis. And it's not like it's a life sentence. Okay, so you have PTSD, you have borderline personality disorder, which is just a trauma-derived, comes from trauma. And so people are afraid to open that door for the stigma.
I don't think addicts realize it either.
No.
I'm going to tell you, I didn't have anxiety until I got to that job, right? I think because my other job, my boss knew I was in AA. It was like, I'm going to my meeting. It wasn't a big thing, where the next job was huge. And I didn't feel comfortable as well. So I think the anxiety multiplied. And I don't think you know that. And I have PTSD complex. I didn't even know there was 2 of them until
CPTSD. Yes.
Yes. And it is. And they diagnosed me in that when I was going through that, because it's delayed. Yeah. It's really delayed. And it's just, I didn't talk about the molestation until 56. And it wasn't until the doctor asked me, and I was like, why are you asking me this? I'm way too together to talk about this. Do you know I manage a division of a company? Like, I seriously was so annoyed that it even came up.
Yeah.
And I never wanted to talk about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I get it. That's a huge point. Thank you for bringing that up, because we don't talk about mental health a lot. This is probably one of the first times it's been brought up. And Tony from 4D just is going to be consulting with the Mental Health Association. And I think the two coming together is so needed, because half the people that use drugs, it is because they're bipolar and they're not diagnosed. They're anxious and they smoke weed. They're depressed and alcohol numbs it. And it does. It really, on top of being hereditary, you know? That's such a good point.
Yeah, that's one of my, so I just shifted gears. So I've been doing a lot of stuff in the community, advocating for, and it was actually Tony that introduced me to advocating. Fast forward, I went to treatment after all these surgeries and stuff. I went to inpatient treatment because I had lost my kids to DHS, right? Me and my husband split, lost my kids to DHS. I ended up leaving my husband for somebody I met in Cedar Hills. Like, it was horrible. But went into inpatient treatment with my kids because that was the only chance I'd get to have my kids with me. And we were in there for almost a year. And
good for you.
When I was in there, the counselor, she gave me and that's how I found out about complex PTSD. She handed me a survival guide because I too survived those horrible things happening to me as a woman. And she handed me a survival guide meant for adolescents having survived traumas like that. And I'm reading through it and I felt so validated and seen. I was like, what? Everything made sense. All these behaviors, me seeking validation from men, me doing all these things that I thought were like, something's wrong with me. It was all part of the PTSD, the trauma.
Yeah.
And she goes, now that you can name it, you can tame it.
Ooh,
and so that stuck with me. Now that you can name it, you can tame it.
I might have to use that.
Use it.
I'm just saying.
Yeah. And I was like, oh my gosh. So when I got out, like when I hear about something that interests me, I will research the heck out of it. I will research it. That's one of my like ADHD things. I will hyper focus on it.
I don't know. That's one of your courageous things. I'm just saying.
So I like hyper focused on it. And I'm like, okay. So I learned about, I used to be flight fawn, which fawn is one of those PTSD things where you like cater, submissive and whatever you want. And then I learned my behaviors changed. Now it's flight or fight. No, you're not going to do this to me no more. But I'm so grateful for the stuff that I learned in Cedar Hills and then the stuff that I learned when I went into treatment and I blended the two.
That's what
I have to blend things. Like I pick and choose from different things that I've learned. And
I was so grateful when I went there. I was sober.
You could absorb it.
Because if I wasn't, I don't think the first time I went, there were some DUI people with me, right?
Yeah.
And there was this one bitch and I was like, please, just in my own mind, I didn't say that, but I knew when every Monday it was she relapsed that weekend, pray for her. But it was a lot of taking up time in class and it was just when she left and graduated, I was so grateful. But the second time with just the mental health issues and it stuck so much. Like Peter has meditation down and a lot of skills that it's taken me a long time to quiet my mind.
Yeah.
Because I used alcohol for me was what I used to quiet the mind, to cool the anxiety. And I think you deal with the addiction, but there's like you're alluding to, that there's two sides to it. There's this mental side of it, and then there's the addictive, and that they go hand in hand, like you're saying. And so I had to learn, and living on life's terms, that phrase is commonly used, but it's like living life on life's terms. You have to learn how to do that without that drug or whatever that is that you're using to get through it.
Yeah.
And so to learn, okay, and like you did, and I love that in the beginning, it wasn't time for you to go address those issues that you addressed later. You had to deal with what you had to deal with first. You had your daughter that you were raising. And so sometimes we have to go through things in a stepped way and to eventually get to that.
Yeah, it's crazy. For me, it was just getting off parole at first and staying sober, being an IV drug user.
I apply that to so many things, and that's breaking things down into small, you know, bits. Like when we bought this house, this yard was so huge. It's, oh my gosh, it's overwhelming. How am I ever going to tame this yard? I broke it down into small bits and then did a little bit at a time. That's what the program is about. One little step at a time. I told my brother, I said, you don't have to. He's like, what about this, that? Don't overwhelm yourself because you'll get stuck.
Yeah.
Take it little bit by little bit. And eventually you'll get there. You'll have the full picture.
Yeah. In the beginning, for me, get to a meeting every day and go to work.
Do the little things. Our brains aren't even right when we're first getting sober.
It takes a long time for it to heal.
Yeah, we got to clear our brains. There's issues in life that you may need to tackle, but you've got to you got to start with a foundation. Your brain's got to be there before you
life
can
doesn't
handle.
Stop happening just because you're sober. Life is life.
Life is going to life no matter what.
Yes, I've had more serious things to deal with in sobriety than I ever did using. It's insane.
Yeah.
So I work in mental health. I just accepted a job. I'm with New Narrative.
I love it.
And I'm like, I finally get to be where I wanted to be. See, like a long time ago.
Who I want to be.
So a long time ago, before I ended up getting deep into my addiction, I started school for psychiatric nursing. That's what I wanted to do. The reason being is I wanted to understand why the people did the things that they did to me. I wanted to understand their mind. So I started taking psychology classes. I'm like, it started making sense to me, because if I can make sense of why you would do this to me, it would make me feel better. So mental health and the whole process of the brain and the different ailments helped me to understand things a little bit better. So I'm really happy to be in a field where I can focus on mental health and use my recovery as my recovery now.
So I just applied to I won't say it out loud until I know if I work there or not, but I'm this late in life trying to merge my skills. And I want to
work
with
your passion,
with my passion, because I just want to be me. I've done the corporate thing, and the last stint was extremely uncomfortable for me. And I couldn't be who I was, where I could be who I was, though I had to be a professional who I was. I believe that I can take my business skills and my recovery skills and do some institution or place a really good job. And that's what I'm working on too. And I just want to I never want to have to dress a certain way. I know you have to cover it all up and not show your tits and ass and shit, right? I get that part. I don't want to wear a business suit and high heels.
It's like wearing a costume.
It is a total costume.
You want to be yourself.
Nylons feel like fake skin to me.
Yeah.
They are the grossest.
Yes.
And I don't want to have fake skin.
Yeah. Where is it that you said you are now working?
New Narrative.
New Narrative. Tell me a little bit about New Narrative. I'm unfamiliar.
New Narrative I actually love it. So it used to be called Luke Dorf, and it is residential and services for people with mental health. Sometimes there's people with mental health that have overlying addiction issues, but we're not focusing on that.
It's almost like a CRM.
Yeah, so I'm using my QMHA certification for this one, but it's, what is a CRM?
CRM is like a peer support specialist, certified recovery mentor.
Yeah, they actually, New Narrative's gone and jumped a lot of fences, and they have a new CEO and so many things. That's just amazing to me. I'm really grateful that this year I'm actually in my passion. But they have peer programs. They have that they incorporated. They have these residential facilities. They have so much that they're offering.
Amen.
And the great thing about it is it focuses on people's mental health needs. And that's where my true passion lies, always has been. And so I've been able to step into something this year that I really wanted to focus on. I actually, when I met Tony, I had gotten out of treatment with my kids and moved into an Oxford house, right? With my kids. And I went to a meeting and
Oxford.
Dude, Oxford gave me the foundation I just can't even say enough great things about Oxford.
We have them on here.
Do you?
Patty.
Oh, Patty's amazing.
I have her story.
Yeah. I got to go to the leadership summits. I got to be a core member at a house, open up a house. I've gone to Washington, D.C. I walked in 2019. I'm walking up the stairs of the Lincoln Memorial. And I'm like, how did I get here? I'm in DC because of Oxford, right? And it was amazing. And my kids got to grow up in that. So they grew up in stability. They knew right away how to work with other people, how to live with other kids, and I think that's part of the reason Ashley's giving and kind is like that's how she grew up.
Yeah.
She's on it too.
She's amazing. Oh my God, I'm so blessed. So I go to a meeting and I see this guy and he's got this t-shirt on and it says Sober Squad on it. And it has this clean date. And I'm like, what is this? It's flashy. And I asked him what it was. And he's, it's a group. And I didn't know at the time, like clicky things. I didn't know. I just wanted to be part of something that belonged. And I ended up joining this group of people who I learned now was just basically peer support. And I wanted to talk to Tony all about my ideas. And he's, meet me at the state capitol. We're gonna. And I was like, oh, cool. I get to talk to him about my ideas. And I get there and he's okay. Now you're going to go talk to senators and all this other stuff. I'm like, what?
Oh, no.
I'm like, what?
Wait, what? Was that on Advocacy Day?
It was an Advocacy Day.
That's what's coming up. So Advocacy Day is coming up.
Yep, I love it. I go all the time.
Robert.
Yes.
Sanders will be here. Amanda from True Colors will be here.
Yeah.
So we're going to have some of those people.
Robert, he was part of the Sober Squad. That's how I know Robert.
Robert's been on our show too.
Yeah, I love Robert. So that's how I met him. Like that we were in squad together. But it's no longer a thing that exists. But it really gave me.
It just doesn't have that name.
It is amazing. Oh my God. So for me, validation and approval was something I needed and sought so much. This group of individuals, we had a chat. I'd say good morning to them, good night to them. Ashley grew up with them. And it really taught me about the power of like connection and community.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They introduced me to a lot and I wanted to be loud and proud. And I wanted to be out in my recovery. I wanted people to know. I had a really hard time following the NA traditions because like I would be like, so-and-so speaking at this meeting. They're like, you can't do that. Anonymity. I'm like, oh man. Like I had a hard time with that one, but they gave me the foundations to do a lot. Like Tony let me help them to open up the Washington County 4D. And I did. He let me create a meeting there in Hillsborough. Yes. There's a meeting out there called Westside Recovers. It's an open recovery meeting because I like open recovery because you could talk about no matter what. You could talk about it.
Ours is open. Yeah.
Yeah. Open recovery, man. Because you could talk about anything. And it's for me, if I have somebody who has been clean off of heroin for 14 years, but they smoke pot, like I'm not going to knock them for that. Like you've been clean for 14 years. Let me celebrate this with you and a safe place for them to speak about it. Eventually, if they're seeking the right forms of help, they'll get to that part where they're just completely abstinent based. Right. But if we down them for not doing it the right way, they might never get there.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, there is no right way.
Yeah.
Everybody's different.
We talk about this all the time. Yeah. Everybody's program is their own.
Yeah.
And
through 47 episodes, everyone has been different.
And every drug is different.
But yeah.
And Melissa, who runs the Hillsborough office.
Yes. Yeah.
She's been on our show and we learned so much about Two-Spirited and Wellbriety.
Yes, I love Wellbriety.
Really tried to come in a million directions. So I always use this analogy, but there's somebody in the car, right? They're thinking about using or whatever. Hopefully, they'll hear one of our stories and think of getting sober. If they are sober, they can't get to a meeting. Hopefully, one of the stories will be inspiration because we've had people that have been through everything.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And if they can recover and actually move on to even being head of an organization or whatever, anybody can, right?
Yeah, exactly.
We all can.
And I love the community that I'm part of. They celebrate and they encourage. So I started that meeting. I started a Facebook page, a group page called Westside Recovers, which is the meetings based off of where people could post upcoming events. Like we just interact with each other. And then with the help of 4D, like I was encouraged, just keep like doing community things. So in 2020, before COVID, mind you, I was encouraged to go ahead. I started this thing called, at the time it was called Resolution Recovery, but it was a rave. So we held a rave on New Year's Eve. A sober rave. Yeah, I wanted to break that stigma. At Boulevard was the name of the place at the time. I got the Oregon Recovers people involved. They were on my board to help me like build it. I got performers. Skylar's a friend of mine. He also did my wedding.
He's on our podcast. That's my dude.
I love Skylar. He's performed, him and Caleb performed that song Heartbreak or Heartbeat at mine and my husband's wedding.
My favorite one is the Walk on Water one.
Yes, that one's a good one.
That is my song.
So we held this rave and it was amazing. There were different performers. We had speakers. We had vendors. We had all these things. And it was like, I was like, okay, this is what I'm supposed to do. Like my whole like vision was like, we'd have a summer like Burning Man festival. And then we'd have a rave in the winter. And we'd have all this thing where we could have communities like come and share their resources and advocate for mental health. That was my thing. And then COVID happened.
And what's so sad about that? But you hit on a point, right? And we talk about this. AA is my foundation.
Yeah.
And I've never blacked out drunk or drunk drive or anything, but I just happened when I got out of prison to go to a gay men's meeting, which was probably the safest place for me in the world. And we talk often that you have to make your recovery as attractive as your using was, because we are not a glum lot.
Yeah.
And you get that foundation and that friendship, right?
Yeah.
In recovery, and it soars.
Yeah.
It absolutely soars.
Well, and I heard you say stigma, and that's one of the things I want to remove, the stigma associated with
that we're boring.
That, and that when you see people on the street nodding off, that they're of no value. No, there's value there. That person could be the next head of 4D. Who knows?
Yeah. I was going down a really good road at that time. I was working for MHAAO. I had gone through my peer training there because I was going to be a drug and alcohol counselor. And then I went through peer training at MHAAO. And I'm like, oh my God, are you telling me that you could get paid to be somebody's friend? What? I heard in one of your podcasts or one of the podcasts, you had mentioned like, my traumas are my credentials, right? Like I don't have to have magna cum laude and all this stuff. Like the things that I've been through are actually my credentials to say, hey, I can help you. And
I went through the same training. I went through CRM training just for the podcast.
Yeah.
I just wanted to know about the different stuff for the podcast. And I went through 4Ds, Tony's Peer Support Services, and it opened my eyes to a lot.
A lot.
And it also made me more accepting of everything.
Yeah.
Like
it really changes your perspective.
It does.
I think everybody at some point, and if they're working in any type of services where they help people, should go through that kind of training because it really opens your eyes to like being able to meet people where they're at. And that's what I learned.
Meet them where they're at.
Yeah.
Do no harm. Right?
Do no harm.
Exactly. Meet them where they're at.
Do no harm.
Yeah.
I ended up during that COVID crisis, I ended up relapsing, right? I was doing good, man. I was the first peer for one of the programs at MHAO. I was headed in a really good direction and I had ended up relapsing. And it was one of the hardest things that I had to go through, but I wasn't the only one that was.
Drinking went up like you wouldn't believe.
Yeah. And like
day drinking became a real thing.
Our meeting went to Zoom. Like in our Zoom presence now, we might have 40 on a Friday on Zoom and 40 in the room. So we were lucky, but I'm just saying, I hear you.
It was horrible. And I felt so ashamed. And I felt like I'd messed up and I let my kids down. And it was really hard. And
part of recovery.
It was, and I was like, what am I going to do? And I didn't feel like I can go back to NA or A. Anyway, so me and my husband, we ended up going over crystal meth users. Is there meetings out there for crystal meth? We ended up starting a CMA meeting online on Zoom. We had 2 days clean when we had our first Zoom meeting. And it ended up becoming one of the most popular. It was called Breaking the Bad. It's now at 4D. Ashley took it for her teenager thing.
Oh, wow.
But I found my people. I found my CMA. I was like, oh my God, I'm safe here. Hi, my name's Megan. I'm a tweaker.
I have to tell you, I just chaired my first CMA meeting about maybe 30 days ago. I was scarred. I'm so used to AA. And I think in AA, it's the easier, softer way for me, the IV drug user. So I went to the CMA meeting. And luckily, it's all the dudes from my meeting and a few others. So I feel very comfortable as far as the people go. But one of my boys, James, shout out, we go around the room and he's a tweaker. And I was like, and you say that shit out loud?
Yeah.
I was scarred. And I was like, I'm not saying that shit out loud. And I was like, I'm Julie and I'm a meth addict. And it was a hard thing for me.
Yeah.
And I think because I felt uncomfortable with it because it is my drug.
Yeah.
Yeah. I felt uncomfortable. We've had a couple shows. One person went into deep needle discussion.
Ooh.
Yeah. I got up, almost got sick. I had to go to the bathroom. And I think for me, staying in the AA world, right?
Yeah.
I haven't been in that world. Yeah.
And that's a great thing, though, with all the different meetings that they're coming out with now, there's a place for everyone.
Yeah.
You can do open recovery. You could do dual diagnosis, which is mental health.
Smart
recovery.
Well, right.
There's so much out there now where you can find your place. And if one thing doesn't work for you, try something else.
Thank you so much for saying that. I say that all the time.
Get it, your mentor.
I wasn't even around when I got sober.
No, it's new. And they follow the AA. They use the AA book and all that stuff for their step work and everything, but they have their own lingo.
They have some tweaker language for real.
It was hilarious to me because I was like, if I could crack a joke at myself, I won't feel so bad. You know,
they did. They were just
tapping on themselves.
And I was like, oh my God. And luckily I just went with it. And I had to read a lot and share. And I was like, does this reading ever end? And Izzy, he was like, that was the funniest you've ever been. I was like, I was scared shitless, but it was good. I think CMA is good.
It is.
I think there's been a need for a long time.
Yeah.
Especially when you go to an AA meeting and it's a closed AA meeting.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Those are hard when it's a religious closed meeting. You can't talk about nothing. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Mhm.
That's how where I used to go was very much like that, very conservative. And it was like, if you started to talk about anything but alcohol, it's like you weren't welcome. And it was like, wait a minute.
The rules. Yeah, that was the hard part for me. I found my way back to NA. So during this like relapse thing, I'm working a peer job. It was virtual. I was doing peer support with Regents. And
I love that.
It was amazing. I helped them start their peer department. It was
did.
beautiful. Yeah, it was a nice thing, but I felt like such a hypocrite, right? I'm like trying to get peer work out there and I was like hiding my addiction. And I went to this women's retreat. And this is the same time that Ashley went out. So I'm at this women's retreat, which I was on the committee for, by the way. But I was one of those people that was in the meetings trying to tell people not to use, but I was hiding it. And I felt like I wanted to be there so bad. And I wanted to feel like I didn't want to lose what I knew because I had known recovery, that connection.
Yeah.
But I had a hard time finding my way back and telling the truth because I thought I would lose everything I worked for. And I was with Terry. Terry was our speaker. Terry Myers.
Oh, yeah.
She was our speaker at this women's retreat. And I had lost my job at MHA because I wasn't willing to admit where I was at. So then I got the job with Regents and I'm thinking everything's fine. She's going to be the speaker. And I told myself I'm not going to use before I go there. And I didn't. My day one was the first day of the retreat. I'm up there and I'm wearing my little name tag with 3 years. So to say, I'm supposed to have 3 years and still holding on to that secret. And she's there. And my supervisor at the time, Rochelle, she was there. She's with MHAO. She's amazing. And I'm there and I'm like, okay. And at the end, they had given that book, the NA book. All the committee members were signing it, but I didn't want to sign it because I didn't want to be that girl. So I didn't sign it. And we're doing the clean time countdown. This is 2 days into the retreat. And my time for 3 years is stand up, and I didn't stand up. And everybody's looking at me. And I had those people looking at me like I knew it. And then the people looking at me like, what is going on? And like my legs are shaking. I'm terrified, right? I'm terrified. And they get down to 5 for 3 days and 2 days. And I stood up and it was the most scariest and
one of the hardest things you ever did.
Hardest things, but I felt free. I didn't care anymore. I didn't care that I'd lose whatever it is I worked for. I can get it back. Like I didn't have to hold on to it anymore. Yeah. And I stood up in front of these people that I was afraid would walk away from me.
And they
didn't. They were just like, oh my God, we're so happy. Thank you for, and a lot of people reached out to me that worked in the field and they're like, I'm trying to come back. How do I do that? Like a lot of people,
that's why I stay. I'm so scared that I wouldn't come back.
Yeah.
Like for real, I am petrified, right? That if I use one time, I'm not coming back. And I always say it's the easier, softer way. I am just scared. I have that fear.
Yeah.
I stayed in AA. I just came to get off parole, but I stayed because I was scared I was going to fuck up. And I just keep staying because more shit keeps coming, and staying is easier for me. But I have to tell you, when you come back, I think it's the most bravest, courageous thing.
It was so
I'm
hard.
a chicken compared to that.
I was there too, where I had gone out and was playing the game, showing up. And when I finally did come back into the rooms, and I was like, I think I turned away from that parking lot and then got to go back. So I finally parked and I went inside and I raised my hand for anyone less than 30 days or whatever it was. And I was just like, I got hugs.
Yes.
I got people coming up to me after the meeting, just surrounding me. I'm so glad you're here and keep coming back, and just so much support.
It was the most empowering thing I ever did. And I'm out there, I'm getting better, and I'm thinking, oh my gosh. And I didn't know it, but at that time that I was at that retreat, my daughter, Ashley, had taken off, and she went to her first rave and tried drugs for the first time.
Oh, wow.
That's what happened. So I got clean, and she
ran
went
away
out
with the girl. Yeah.
And I didn't find out till a little later, and we went on that journey. But
kudos to you on the journey with her, because I have to tell you.
Oh, man. Yeah.
I don't know, as a mom, and I just had to do this recently, and I was so proud of myself because I was so codependent for so long and not going through mental health counseling yet. I didn't know that the reason I didn't let you stay at anybody else's house was because I was scared. She'd ask to go to so-and-so's house, and I'd be like, no, but they can come here.
Yeah.
And I had to control everything. I went to every game because no one's going to pick her up after the game, right? And I didn't realize this was all because of my childhood. I just thought I was being a good protective parent. And really, I was obnoxious as fuck.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize that I kept her so structured. But when your daughter came to you, your reaction was really good.
Yeah.
Like, I was like, wow, I was really impressed. I said, I think you're drinking too much. Maybe you want to try this. And luckily, my kid, I think growing up in AA, just went and did it. And I was shocked. But I think how we respond when they tell us or whatnot, you with your brother, you're awesome. Just no judgment. Just.
That's all we learned. It's what I've learned.
I know, but not everybody handles it that way.
It was hard.
We know that.
I went back on my peer roots, right? Like, I was like, okay, what did I learn? And it was like, first of all, meet them where they're at without judgment. And she knew the rooms. Like, she grew up in them. She grew up in Oxford. She grew up in the room. She understood. And it was quite a journey for us because I had to let her find her own recovery. And it was really hard because, like, for a long time, it was like, oh, you're Ashley, you're Megan's daughter. Like, they knew me. And so it was hard for her to find her, who she was, her individuality. And so I stepped back to let her find her way.
Same.
It was amazing. And Harmony. So I had Harmony High School. I love this place, but I will tell you, at first I was really apprehensive about sending her there because in my mind, I'm thinking it's a continuation school. They're not going to have the curriculum, the education that they need. Like, she was a cheerleader. She was doing great in school. I didn't know that drugs were helping her along the way, but like, she was doing all these things. So I didn't find out she was using to almost a year into her use.
Oh, wow.
When she finally told me. And she was like, I really want to go to Harmony. Like, she'd gone to 40. I knew what to do. Immediately, Tony opened up the adolescent center. I'm like, I'm sending her there. It was a miracle of God that Robert was running it. She already knew Robert growing up.
That's what she said.
And so I'm like, this is just working out perfectly. I got a hold of my friend who runs Parrot Creek, got her into mental health services. I knew what to do, but I had this I didn't want to pull her out of high school and put her into Harmony because I thought maybe she'd be introduced to more, like it would teach her things. And I'm like,
like when you go to prison and you learn 16 other things except for what you went for.
Exactly. And so my friend Bo, he's the new guy at Oregon Recovers.
He's our friend too.
I love Bo. I want you to come to it's their version of Pure Apocalypse. What's it called? The Recovery Summit. Yeah.
The summit.
I went to the Recovery Summit, and lo and behold, this is in my thinking phase of whether or not I'm going to send Ashley. Sharon, the principal over at Harmony, and Dante, they come in with a answering board with all the kids from Harmony. And it was it was on my schedule. I'm sitting there, I'm like, okay, God, I hear you. And I'm listening to these kids talk about what Harmony's done for them. And I'm bawling. I'm like, my tears are pouring. I like ugly crocodile tears. And they're looking at me. And I was like, I walked up to Sharon afterwards. I'm like, thank you. Like, you just answered my questions. And then the next week we were there at the high school and she had the interview process. And I definitely a godsend. She's like, her grades, she's amazing. She helps other kids. Other kids are encouraged by her. She's reached out to kids that were still stuck at her high school that are still stuck, and she's got them to come into 4D services.
She basically does peer support services for the under 18. And the other thing is, we've met Dante and we've met him at events. We met him with Bo. We met him at Recover Out Loud. We've met him a couple times. But meeting somebody, speaking to them or whatever, but getting to know. I didn't find out as much about Harmony until she came. Yeah, she
is amazing.
And now I was like, we really got to
I can't wait to get over there. And we have a standing appointment somewhere in the future, but I can't wait for that to happen.
Yeah.
I can't wait for you guys to get to know them too.
Well, now that Ashley, to be honest with you, is there, I feel like we have a friend there, somebody we know.
Yeah.
No, seriously. And she's, yes, Julie, come to Harmony. And he had mentioned doing a podcast there.
Yeah.
Ashley could do it for sure. She's brilliant.
Isn't she? Oh, thank you so much. Everything that it wasn't what you expect your kids to be like, oh, they're going to be doctors or lawyers or whatever. This isn't the path I would have chose for her, but she has the ability to help so many kids.
Yeah.
Dante had said that she's the reason that Harmony, like, she's what they hope for kids to get from this type of experience.
She embodies the spirit.
She does. And she's learned how to take Harmony and take 4D and the services that they offer and combine them and make it work for her.
Yeah,
and it's inspiring.
The thing I think of about her, right? My daughter was perfect, okay? Played 3 sports, Girl Scouts, 1st through 12th grade, because I didn't let her move either direction, and bought her house at 30. Just everything you would want as a parent. And the drinking excessively didn't come on until 32, right? 30 to 31, sobriety at 32. Her learning this young and having this experience young, right? Ashley can run Oregon Recovers, the Senate, and 4D. I'm just telling you, like, she's that brilliant. Yeah. And it's only an attribute of you, for real, for providing the support services, getting her to where she needed to be, being open to it. I'm being serious. Like, she's brilliant. And to get it at such a young age, she's going to have this foundation. And I talk about this all the time. You can go to treatment. Okay, anybody can go to treatment. Okay, that doesn't mean you're going to stay clean. You have to have a foundation when you get out of treatment that keeps you clean and stays clean, that you want to be a part of. And I believe that she is a person that has that and will continue. Does that make sense? You say, merging and building. She held herself so exceptional. She's the youngest person we've had on the podcast.
Oh, boy, I love that.
Yeah, we haven't had any minors on the podcast. And I had her make sure it was okay with you.
Yeah.
And then her CRM came. And just I don't know, as a parent, I'm a parent, and I'm proud of almost 8 months. But God, I wish I almost would have let her act up younger so she didn't have to go through it later. I think going through it younger is...
I think getting to people, kids.
Yeah.
Getting the younger you get to someone, because you're setting them off early on to be successful later. So yeah, if we could have had that shoulda, woulda, coulda, the services weren't there. So that's why it's so great to see what is developing here and become a model for other towns, other states. We were the worst off in the bunch.
Well, different backgrounds. All 3 of us here, we talked about this before. I went to a Catholic school, right? I never had to worry about food, clothing, or those things, though the addiction part and the trauma is so real for me. You were raised in it.
Yeah.
And I think it just shows that no matter what your circumstances are,
Right.
no matter where you come from, there's no requisite for recovery. You can get it. And I think having her on the show will hopefully let people know that are younger that you can.
Well, I think I know for me, when I was young, I was very guided by my peers, and I wanted to be a part of. And so whatever they were doing, I was more likely to get into it because I wanted to be a part of. I wanted to feel part of the
dance.
Group,
First, I just wanted to play basketball. Then I just wanted to dance at the club.
Having what 4D does and having the youth speak out and not remain anonymous necessarily, but be able to show that, no, I've been through this and look at where I'm at. Look at this cool club. Look what fun stuff we get to do. That attraction that it builds. Like you were saying early on when we first started talking, you got to make your recovery as attractive as your addiction. And if I would have had a club like True Colors to go to, because I'm being a gay man, all we have is a bars, which is where you drink. You go to drink. And if I had a True Colors and could have had the same experiences, dancing and performing and all of that.
And if you could have gone to a drag queen show at True Colors, Peter.
I would have been the drag queen up there.
It is. That's the greatest thing is that now, because Portland needed and needs a lot of love, I'm starting to see more and more of it, and we need it. We really need it. And it's good. It's so great. I don't know. There wasn't that, like Peter was saying, when we were younger, that wasn't available. No one talked about recovery. At that time, they were talking about AIDS. It was just about using a clean needle. I think that was my biggest concern during my drug use, wasn't sober or whatnot, was making sure I had a clean needle. And it's just, now they're smoking. It's just amazing the stuff that's out there if you want to get sober.
It is. And there's a lot, but not enough.
That's the understatement.
We're just the tip of the iceberg. Yeah.
A lot, but not enough.
We're celebrating because we see stuff happening. But yeah, it is the tip of the iceberg. There's so much more. But I see things building.
And I'm so grateful for that.
Yeah.
Well, and I see
so
like
grateful.
True Colors. I've seen their growth in the last 3 years.
Yeah.
Just think about how much 4D grew last year.
Yeah.
A treatment center, 40 beds for teenagers, the youth center, opening a place in Vancouver, and then MACBO, MHA, like all these places are growing. GTD is growing.
Go the distance. Yeah.
That's my boy.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that program. Me, myself, I'm not a walker.
Girl,
runner,
I walk at the back. He pressures me. I will tell you, I consider him my husband. And he's always will come. And I went to 4 a few times. And I walk in the back. I'm not running 6 miles with them. But
me neither.
And we did the 5K. We did a podcast there at his 5K. And I ran the last 40 yards to get my medal.
Ashley and I joined the recovery gym, which is part of the Alano Club.
Yeah.
And we went with CrossFit and we did one session. That was it. We were tapped out. We're like, nope, we're done. It's like we did it.
Amanda's boxing now. That's her thing. She's training to be a boxer and stuff. And I'm like, and she's, I got to get to this certain weight before I'm 35. And I'm like, 35? Yeah. What was that like?
I'm really grateful to be here. I'm really glad that you guys see in my daughter what I've always seen.
She shines.
Thank you. Like that warms my heart. My other daughter too, she's one of those ones that are afraid of drugs so much so because she's seen what it does to her family. But I love how they're so interactive with each other. And
she said that too. Yeah. I think, again, that's attributed to you. And I would like to know, or Peter usually asks, go ahead and ask if you could tell anybody anything.
Oh, yeah. I was wondering, so I want to know a little bit more about what your future holds, because you're starting a new position.
Yes.
A new, what they just rebranded recently.
Yeah, it's been New Narrative for a while. I remember when it was Luke Dorff. What does my future hold?
Yeah, what are you excited about?
What do you want to say
to
our listeners as well? What is your message to them?
Yeah. So for my future, really want to dive in. My second day at New Narrative, I'm in NEO training, and I'm messaging they have an advocacy and development department, and I'm messaging them and quickly got involved with that. So I still want to use my voice, but I want to do it for mental health services because I really strongly believe that could bridge the gap. And so that's my passion. And my daughter can handle the stuff for the finding the recovery, and I'll handle the stuff for finding the mental health. And
you're a duo. You're going to be together.
We've talked at Hands Across the Bridge. That's the other thing. We're going to start a YouTube channel, which we're going to have videos on TikTok and incorporate it. But it's going to be a platform where we encourage families. We haven't figured out what we're going to name it, either Restoring Roots or something, where we're going to have families.
I'll come up with a catchy name. Just
please,
give me a week.
So we're going to have a place where, and I already have people in mind who I want to have, but families who could talk about their stories and how they got to recovery together. There's a lot of parents out there that are really afraid to follow their kids into recovery because they used with them, and they hold a lot of shame. But we want a safe place where they could talk about how they got there and then celebrate things together and then celebrate each other individually.
Yeah.
And Ashley and I have a way that we could banter back and forth together to where we want to have a vlog, video thing where we could talk. And TikTok's huge for kids and stuff. They flip through it and they see something like that, and maybe they could talk and it will inspire their family to get on there. So that's what we want to do. I've been talking to Elton about that, and we could do it in the comfort of our own house.
Yeah.
And
This is Studio H.
yeah, it's amazing.
Peter's house.
We could have people Zoom in and talk to people about how they got to recovery together as a family.
I love that.
That's our future together. And if I could tell anybody anything, it's never be ashamed of your story. Like, no matter what you've done, where you've been through, your story is your testimony. Somebody's going to relate to it.
Yeah.
And you don't have to go into gory details, but you can give enough of an outline to where somebody's going to say, oh man, I went through that too. And they're going to feel like they're going to feel safe to open up. You don't have to recite all the words from the books. You don't have to be one of those people that like recites things. Like, walk the walk that you talk. Live with integrity and let your life on the outside reflect what you're doing on the inside and what you say in the rooms.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
That should be a book. And I really don't want to cry, but I really love how you say, don't be ashamed.
Yeah.
I was ashamed for so long. For real, for going to prison.
I heard your parts
and for being involved in the escort service. And it wasn't until my doctor told me, Julie, only 8% of the people that have been through what you've been through even survive, let alone have as much years in recovery as you. And it took going through IOP when they said, take the worst thing that ever happened to you and switch it. And if I didn't go to prison, I probably wouldn't have got the time out I needed. And I've been able to flip some of those things. Just my company just restructured and I got laid off. I got to process all this stuff, be with Peter, do more of the podcasts, which every podcast personally helps me process a lot of memories that I shut down. But I'm not ashamed anymore. I'm so proud that I've stayed out of prison for almost 31 years now. And not everybody does that. Recidivism is so, common. And I've been able to switch it around. And just as of today, I've survived 100% of the days of my life. You too. Yeah. And that is everything.
There's a phrase I heard years ago. There's a reason for everything and everything has a reason. But I would look back at what I did and what I went through and just be like, what the hell is the reason for this? Why did I have to go through all that? And as time goes on, little things come out that, like helping my family member, doing this podcast, meeting Julie and having her a part of my life, the lunch, all of these things that have evolved. And then the more I do this podcast is a passion of mine, it's a passion of Julie's, passion of ours. And to every episode, it's like it builds. It's
I love your guys' podcast.
Well, and a lot of time to it. We didn't know how to go about funding and grant writing, and we're going to get to that. But we thought we'd put out a good product first.
Yeah, I really wanted to do what and just like you're doing now. What is passionate for me? That's what my soul searching was. What are my skills, and how can I make them work with a passion that I have? And recovery is is a passion of mine. And I'm a geek. I know how to do all this stuff.
He's not a geek. He's brilliant.
So I put all that together and here it is. It's unfolding daily.
And can I say, from being a person who's being interviewed, what an honor it feels like, right? So when Ashley was like, I'm going to be on the podcast, and she was like, she held so much joy inside. This is what I've accomplished. And for you guys, it's just you're talking to somebody just like you would in a meeting. But for her to be able to feel like I shared my story, they wanted to hear it. It was huge.
Yeah.
And I've heard other people say the same thing. Like, I got to be on the podcast and I've listened to the stories and I love it. And I love when you guys share your individual little pieces of your story. Like, I've literally picked through just to pull your story because I found so much that I related to. And I say, I too have an escorting background, right? But one of my therapists told me, because I was a lot of people gave me shame for it. And my church being one of them, they're like, that's false confidence. And I thought that I was doing something wrong. But then I learned that in my own way, I was healing. I was taking back something that had been taken from me, and I was putting the power in my seat. If you're going to take this from me, this is what you're going to give me for it. And I turned it.
Talk about flipping it.
Yeah, I flipped it. And I'm like, you know what? It lasted for a moment of time in my life. I don't regret it because in its own way, it gave me a sense of like value that I wasn't finding anywhere else. And I don't regret it at all because I share that story with other people and I share with them like, hey, I don't regret what happened to me. It was an experience and I could share with other people that I've been through it, but I got out of it.
I just realized what a businesswoman I was now. I got arrested with a lot of money. I didn't know it was the loneliest time of my life. I realized what I could do if I did it correctly, which is what I have done. But I will tell you that it's a lot. It's a lot. And I think for me, it took a minute to get there on all that. I just wanted to be a good mom and set that example. It was so important to me because I got in trouble and stuff like that. It was just, I don't know. It was a passion within itself. Yeah. I want to thank you for being here today. Yeah. I am so happy to have you here.
I could continue on for hours because I have so much excitement and energy. Yeah. And I can feel your passion. It's like addictive.
It is. It is very addictive.
This has been wonderful.
Maybe somewhere down the line, when we get our YouTube channel running, me and Ashley, you could have us together and we can have you guys together.
That'd be awesome. That'd be awesome.
I love hiding behind the microphone. No, just kidding. I don't know. I've been to so many meetings that
I know our paths will cross in the future because we're going to connect with Harmony, and who knows how that will develop. They've talked about teaching the kids how to podcast, so maybe there'll be some podcasts coming out of that school. So you just never know where this is all going to go.
Yes,
so,
I love it.
I think the future is bright like that, and hopefully,
it's powerful. The excitement.
I will work for an institution that you're familiar with. I'm hoping. I just don't want to jinx it yet.
You got it.
I'm on my third interview. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Julie,
thanks for being here, Megan. I appreciate it.
Peter, Megan, here on the Real Recovery Podcast. Thanks for listening.
That's a wrap on today's episode. Thanks to each and every one of you for lending us your ears and hearts. Your engagement is what fuels our passion and keeps this podcast thriving.
We cherish the moments we share here and hope they resonate with you, whether you're on a daily commute, at the gym, or just taking a moment for yourself.
Make sure to head over to our website at realrecoverypodcast.com. While you're there, subscribe to our newsletter for the latest insights and uplifting stories from our community delivered straight to your inbox.
Click that subscribe button on your favorite podcast player too, so you can keep up with every new episode. It's your support that keeps our conversation alive and meaningful.
And if our stories have touched you, consider using the donate button on our site. Your contributions, no matter the size, are deeply appreciated. They help us continue our mission of sharing hope and healing.
Join us beyond the podcast and follow our journey on social media. Find us on Instagram, Facebook, and on X, formerly known as Twitter. All the links are on our site. so you can stay connected and be a part of the Real Recovery community every day.
Your likes, shares, and comments not only spread the message of recovery, but also remind us that we're all in this together.
So, until we meet again, remember that recovery is a journey, not a destination, and we'll be here to accompany you every step of the way to recovery, real recovery.
Thanks for listening.